The Agenda on Dubai Eye 103.8.
You are tuned into The Agenda with myself, Sonal Rupani. I'm standing in for Georgia for another week and a half or so that I'm with you. And it's been really fun to cover some of the different topics over the last few days. Now, we're turning our attention to the fact that the UAE passport is now ranked as the 8th most powerful passport in the world. It's tied with Malta and holds access to 185 visa-free or visa-on-arrival destinations. That's according to the latest Henley Passport Index, and it actually marks a dramatic ascent from 42nd place just 10 years ago. So the UAE has been one of the biggest risers in this rankings, as I mentioned, shooting up 34 places over the last 10 years. And in fact, it's the only big riser to break into the top 10 in the ranking. And within the Middle East, the UAE holds the top passport, no other regional passport breaking into that global top 10 as well. As we look at the list more broadly, though, Singapore holds the crown as the world's most powerful passport. They've got visa-free access to 193 destinations. And of course, we have a number of nationalities and groups here in the UAE that people that are based in communities that are based here in the UAE that don't fare quite as well in the rankings. And let's look at just a couple of the common diasporas that are based here. When you see Pakistan's rankings, that's at 96. Lebanon is in at 89. Nigeria at 88. Egypt 85, India's 77, and the Philippines as well at 72. Now, that list only goes up to about 99 or so because a lot of countries hold a similar ranking to each other. So within one ranking, you might have multiple countries. So we really do see a lot of people here who are in communities who are based here in the UAE that are affected by this. I was speaking to Richard and Brandy about this just a few moments ago. I'm Indian. I've been applying for visas my whole life, and I've never been denied one. But I do think, and as I've heard stories of this, that I would be absolutely devastated if this happened to me. You know, I've also found that at times in my life, I've wanted to work in different countries, but my passport has been a big hindrance to that possibility. I even know somebody who was planning his own wedding in Italy. Things already in process, they're all ready to go, and then he gets denied his visa. So he's left figuring out how he's going to get to his own wedding and if it's even going to be possible. I mean, there's a lot of people's lives who are affected by this, and getting Schengen visas has notoriously been getting harder. And I mentioned Schengen visas as an obvious one, but let us know about any challenges that you've faced. I'd love to hear from you on this. I know it does affect a lot of people, so you can always reach out to us on WhatsApp, 04871 5500. Also, I want to know if you would spend some money in a different area in the world to get access to a better residency or a better passport than the one you currently have. Now, to talk about this a little bit more, we're joined by Daniel Duric. He's CEO of Passport Legacy. It's a company that offers solutions for global residents and citizenship through investment. Daniel, thanks for joining us from Italy, I believe.
Yes, thank you for having me. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Now, Daniel, let's first start off by getting your thoughts on this news. The UAE passport is more powerful now, up one place from last year's rankings, but significantly, as we said, over the last decade. What are some of the factors behind seeing a passport jump like this?
Well, this is definitely the result of clear policy, the common power of a country to focus on what matters, to focus on investment, to focus on diplomatic ties, and having a vision to make a better country and better attractiveness for the country. So the result of the UAE has been astonishing over the last year, and this is in line with other countries that have been following the same path.
Now, as you've already heard me mention, we've got a lot of passport holders here based here in the UAE that are on the other end of those rankings. A number of people with financial means have participated in Invest for Citizenship or resident schemes. You work with people like this. Tell us a little bit more about what motivates your clients.
Yes, absolutely. So the main driver is really the fact that they cannot travel. You mentioned your experience earlier. It takes usually months of preparation for these visa applications, and people just want to have the freedom of going on holiday or traveling for business and having access to global opportunities. Another driver is allowing the children to have a better future. So if you have a passport that doesn't give a lot of opportunities, of course, parents think about it long term, and they want to grant their children a better passport, a better residence where they have better access to school or travel or opportunity or business and so forth.
What are some of the most popular destinations that your clients in the UAE are opting in for when it comes to these schemes?
Without doubt, European residency. So in countries like Cyprus or Greece or Malta, you can invest in the country. Usually, it's real estate, and then the whole family gets a residency permit. In some cases, also permanent residency. And this ID card, it's like an Emirates ID, allows you to travel within the European area and also settle in some countries as well. Other programs, other popular programs are the Caribbean citizenship programs, where a donation of roughly $250,000 grants you a second nationality, a passport for life.
And, you know, we have seen some changes in these, as they're often called, golden visa schemes globally. So Portugal comes to mind. It was one destination that was very popular for a period of time for these kind of opportunities. But they did severely tighten the rules on this a couple of years ago. So when people invest into these programs, do they need to be considering if there's a risk of the situation changing based on that country's politics and their rules?
You're right. The landscape in this industry is constantly changing, and countries are implementing stricter rules and making this investment always more expensive. I've seen this over the last 7 years, and it's been the case in all countries. In Portugal, for instance, used to be a $250,000 or $280,000 investment. Now it's $500,000, and then there are some physical presence requirements. So this is changing, and it's important for anyone thinking of doing this to sit down, talk to someone, evaluate all options, and take into account all the risks involved.
Now, as I hear you talk about some of the investment amounts, it becomes quite clear that this is something that's really an opportunity for people who are wealthy. What's available at sort of the lowest end of the spectrum for people who want some sort of improvement and want to pay as little as possible, or have the means only to pay as little as possible for this?
Well, if you're still considering residency by investment, there are countries in Europe, for example, Latvia, where $100,000 allows you to get a residency. But again, every country around the world have different forms of migration, naturalization, marriage, study, and we focus only on residence and citizenship by investment. So it's for the lucky investors that have the money and want to secure a fast track to these residency or citizenship routes around the world.
You know, part of the motivation, as you mentioned earlier, for this was travel. But are we seeing people just, you know, getting these residencies or getting these citizenships and then just keeping their home base in the UAE and just using it to travel a bit more? Or are you actually seeing more people who want a multi-country lifestyle, who actually do want to live in different places throughout the year? And what are some of those residence requirements to stay in country once you do have that residency or citizenship?
Yes, so actually you're right. I would say more than 90% of our clients, they opt for the residency, they opt for the passport, but then they continue to stay where they are. Why? Because their family, they have a business to run, they have a job, they just want to have the access, they want to have the plan B, they want to have the peace of mind. So in most cases, they don't relocate. They stay in the UAE, they stay in India, they stay in the US, they stay in China, wherever they are. But answering your second question, if they actually want to relocate, they can do that because of the passport of that residency. And usually there is very little physical presence requirement. For example, in Greece, you can actually have a residency and stepping foot into Greece once every 5 years. Or if you like Greece and you say, this is where I want to live, this is where I want to retire, you can stay as much as you want.
And which countries are you seeing, which nationalities are you seeing the greatest demand for doing these kind of invest for residency or citizenship schemes?
So historically, it was always people that lived in developing countries, China, India, and some Southeast Asian countries, as well as Russia. But over the last 4 or 5 years, because of the pandemic, because of the tension, because of tax reasons in some cases, it has shifted a little bit. So we see now a big demand from the US. We see demand from the UK. We see demand from Germany. So in these cases, it's not the main driver is not mobility. It is more, I'm a little bit worried what's going on in my country. I never talked about having a second nationality. Since we interdependent world, let's just have 2 or 3 residency or citizenship where I can live, work, and stay wherever I want in case something happens in a part of the world.
You're right. That is a recent trend we've been seeing of people from certain countries historically where you think that's a coveted passport, actually saying, I don't want this nationality, often, as you've said, for tax reasons. So what sort of passports then are those types of nationals going for?
Well, a more tax-friendly passport. For example, if you are Americans and let's say you live in the UAE for 15, 20 years and you don't think of going back to the US or you don't have any ties anymore, you still pay taxes back in the US. So there are some people that say, I prefer to opt for another nationality. So there are 15 around the world, more or less, that allow to do so. And there are definitely more tax-friendly ones where you don't have to pay global taxation, meaning that if you live in the UAE, you work in the UAE, you just are subject to taxation in the UAE, which is, of course, very, very good, very tax-friendly, but at least you don't need to pay back to the country. So this is what these people are thinking about.
Daniel, thank you so much for joining us on the line today to talk about this.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.